City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting, recorded January 26, 2026.
It is 6 o'clock. I will call the meeting, the special Plan Commission meeting to order. Administrator Kuhn, may we get a roll call, please?
Yeah, Weeza is excused. Kneebone?
Here.
Armson?
Here.
Beacom?
Here.
Bryce?
Here.
Shitty Strike?
Here.
And Schuler?
Here.
All right, we've got a quorum. Go to the next item on the agenda. Discussion and possible action on the zoning code rewrite, the first review of the draft floodplain ordinance, and as with all the other things, I will just throw those over to Mr. Kuhn and let him drive the train.
Just for point of reference, so there's going to be no action taken for any of these items. This is merely discussion and presentation and discussion amongst each of these topic areas. So these first two agenda items, this one and then the next one, these are items that have been reviewed by other agencies. The floodplain ordinance being reviewed by the DNR and FEMA as required. So for the course of the conversation and the presentation that I'm going to give you folks, I'm not expecting you to know every nook and cranny into this ordinance and provide this very substantive feedback. I consider the DNR and the FEMA as the main players in providing that substantive feedback. This is more an opportunity for you folks to become aware of floodplain zoning because it's not visible as often, and really B, if there's any questions that you have with how we administer our floodplain zones here in the city and elsewhere, feel free to chime in. So I guess just to provide a quick overview of what floodplain zoning is in a nutshell, this image on the top end of the slide, this is a pretty common image that you see in other municipal zoning codes. The DNR has this image as well. And what this is essentially depicting the different components that make up a broader floodplain area. So just going to kind of break down each of these items in a little bit more detail. The normal channel, as shown on the picture, is kind of self-intuitive, where a river flows, where a lake or stream is, where there's permanently water more or less located within a defined area year over year. Beyond that, kind of once you look outside of that normal channel on both sides is what's considered the floodway. The definition that I have taken from this ordinance and shown on the screen is, so for a floodway is the channel of a river or stream and those portions of a floodplain adjoining the channel required to carry the regional flood discharge. So basically meaning when there is a flood event, this is the area where there's primed to be the flowage of flood water. This is really the area that's meant to accommodate that additional flooding. The flood fringe areas, this is really taking one step beyond the floodway boundary, is that portion of the floodway that falls outside, portion of the floodplain rather, that falls outside of the floodway, which is covered by floodwaters during a special flood, a regional event, and is associated with the standing water rather than flowing water. And the flood fringe area is really the key point when we're talking about any sort of land improvements, any sort of development that occurs within a floodplain area. One of the big things that has to happen if there's a proposal for development in a floodplain, in a flood fringe area, is to determine what that base flood elevation is. And what's, I have it defined on the screen as well. This base flood elevation means the flood having a 1% chance of being equaled or exceeded in any given year, and that's shown through FEMA's maps as well. In order to delineate where that base flood elevation is, what's done is, or what's created is what's called a hydraulic and hydrology study, an H&H study, which goes through a whole slew of scientific modeling that I couldn't tell you the first thing about. There's more, to be blunt, there's engineers who are certified and are certified to produce those studies, and they obviously know a heck of a lot more with that than I. But that's basically the key component to determine what sort of development, if any, can occur within that flood fringe area. If there's a proposal for constructing something that falls below the base flood elevation, then that requires either fill being brought in or just not any development allowed to occur there in the first place. Taking a little bit closer look to home here. This is taken just from our GIS maps through the county level. The pink shaded area shows land that's covered by one type of floodplain zone. Now, there's a whole slew of different floodplain zones as identified in the ordinance. Essentially, for the case of the city, it's the shoreland areas along the Plover River and the west side. That's basically the areas in the city that fall within a floodplain zone. I'll be the first to admit we're pretty lucky in that our land area is pretty limited with floodplain zones. There's other municipalities where, and especially on the county level as well, where they have staff whose responsibility consists a lot of floodplain review for development. So thankfully, that's not really, it doesn't happen too much where there's an H&H study, let's just say, that I require for any sort of development. The ordinance itself, these 10 bullet points are really the 10 subsections that make up this ordinance, starting from the statutory authorization allowed through state and federal law for municipalities to have a floodplain ordinance, going down to the general standards that apply to lands regardless of what floodplain zone they are located in, down to the unique regulations for each type of floodplain district, your floodway, flood fringe, and so forth, and then more of the administration and the amendment portion of it. This is a little bit unique of an ordinance in that, typically if we as a city seek to amend our ordinance, it goes before you folks and the council for approval. For this, if there's any revisions that are requested, the DNR and FEMA are required to review and approve of it before you folks take action on it. Really boiling it down into how does this impact you folks as a plan commission? This slide pretty much shows the delineation of responsibilities between this commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. Your function is to oversee what I do, essentially, in administering the floodplain ordinance, and then review and advise the council for any changes to the floodplain ordinance as you see fit. The zoning board has arguably more responsibilities. They have the purview of granting variances from the floodplain ordinance, hearing administrative appeals if any one person or persons are aggrieved by a decision I make, and regulating this ordinance. And then lastly, deciding upon disputes to a floodplain district boundary. If I, say for example, I delineate a property to fall within one floodplain zone and a party has a contrary opinion to that. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot view. I'll start with any clarifying questions.
A little bit before your time, but are you able to give kind of a background of what the city did roughly a decade ago that took a lot of properties out of the floodplain?
Are you talking about when the levee was constructed? Yeah, so the levee, that's a good point. So this kind of horseshoe portion of the pink shaded color kind of wrapping around the downtown. Prior to the construction of the levee, I think that fell within the 100-year floodplain. Levee was constructed where the paper mill is located, and because of that levee being constructed, it falls technically within its own unique type of floodplain zone. I think it's might be zone A, which basically says it falls within a floodplain zone, but it has a significantly reduced flood risk because of the levee. So, yeah, it's subject to a lot less restrictions for that floodplain zone versus that of if anything's proposed for development on the west side, let's just say.
But that took a lot of properties out of the floodplain.
Yeah, a lot of for the most part residential, but yeah, I mean, if you look at this area where my cursor is moving, it's a significant chunk.
Yeah, I think that was about 2015 or 16, one of the first
Yeah.
things in my first term of the council. And they no longer had to pay flood insurance, so, but they did have to pay some kind of special assessment.
The special assessment was a little bit less than 1 year of flood insurance, so
Yeah.
I think it was well worth it.
And one thing I'll say, just the importance of it, I mean, again, of a floodplain ordinance in general, like I mentioned at the jump, thankfully in the city, we don't have to administer our floodplain ordinance as frequently because of how sparse floodplain zones are located in the city. With that said, I mean, you've heard the news, what was it, a year and a half ago with the Camp Mystic flooding down in Texas? And how there were a lot of questions shortly after that flooding event took place of why were they allowed, not that long prior to that flood event, why were they allowed to expand that campground into a floodway, the most restrictive type of floodplain boundary? And so, I mean, this ordinance includes provisions about the creation of campgrounds. I'm not sure if this was a requirement pre or post the Camp Mystic event, but it has real life implications for any sort of development, loss of life, loss of property. So it's a hefty ordinance, some 60 pages or so compared to the page and a half that we have now, but it has a lot of meat on the bones. And good sleeping material if you can't sleep at night.
That's primarily model language, right?
Correct.
Okay, that explains a lot.
You don't think I can hash out these really dry language provisions?
I got a couple pages of suggestions.
Yeah. Yeah, if you wanna email that to me, obviously I'll have to run it past.
Actually, I can just run through them pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I don't know where to start. Let's see. The word municipality is used a lot, but it's the city's ordinance.
Right.
And I realized that the DNR called it municipality, and municipality is even defined in the back as the entity enacting the ordinance. So change all the municipalities to the city, or however you want to put it. There's a lot of mentions of department. Department is not defined in the definitions. So obviously, whatever your favorite version of Wisconsin DNR is. Mm-hmm. And there's occasional mentions of, the department regional office. So if you can clarify that, just for clarification's sake, if it's the city's ordinance.
Sure.
Little things like capital O versus little o for ordinance. You get some paragraphs that have them both in there, so if you could just go through there and make that consistent. Same with the acronyms. You know, you've got letter of map revisions written out here. It's LOMAR in some places. There's a LOMC there, and it's all kind of jumbly. And if there's a way to go back and just introduce it properly early on, and then just use the acronyms as you go down. The interesting things like on page 8, you see the community shall assure that. Well, the community, it's going to be Stevens Point. There's vague references that come out of the model language that could benefit from
Specificity.
Being a little spruced up.
Sure.
One in particular I'm curious about is on page, let's see, page 21 of the page numbers.
Of the packet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, no, of the actual ordinance, page 21 of the ordinance.
I see.
It's going to be section 6.12C, and it's the city shall keep a record which lists all nonconforming uses and nonconforming structures, their present equalized assessed value, the cost of all modifications or additions which have been permitted, and the percentage of the structure's total current value those modifications present. Exactly, right?
Yeah.
You guys actually do that?
No, we do not.
Thank you. But you're going to have to if you, with that part of the ordinance. I've laughed at that for years now.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
to be honest, there's other provisions similar to that
Oh, yeah.
scattered amongst our current code. Like I think short-term rentals are another one. So
Okay, well.
I'll see if the DNR is accepting of removing that. But
Or what they,
Will actually do?
well, what they'll consider to be a reasonable approximation of what that's supposed to entail. I mean, logically, it makes sense, right? If you're going to be regulating this, and if the rules say that, you can't replace but blah, 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 you have to have some way of tracking it. I don't know of anybody who's ever done it.
it'd be a pain. I mean, I don't even want to think of trying to tally all the structures on the west side of town.
Right? Those are the big ones. I'll send along some of the other ones that are kind of the smaller ones. But I think that's, okay. If you go to page 32
Of the same?
of the ordinance,
Okay.
let's see. If you get into the 7.32, A, well, it's got a municipality in it. B, it's got a Department of Regional Office in it. Let's see. The decision, you go 1-1. It's supposed to be a 3, I assume?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Page
Again, I'm sorry, a
32.
teeny thing, but
No, this is going to be probably the most arduous process when I'm consolidating all these provisions into one code, is making sure.
using a knit comb to try to
Yeah.
get some of this stuff out.
Our current, all of our municipal codes use different formatting tools.
If you go, flip over to next page 33, under boundary disputes,
Yeah.
and you go down to C, it says the board should inform the zoning committee. In the previous paragraphs, the Plan Commission was described as the zoning agency, so I guess to be consistent, either call it the zoning agency or the Plan Commission.
I'll just do Plan Commission.
Yeah, mind your uppercase, lowercase. And outside of that, yay.
You sound very thrilled about floodplain ordinance.
Well, I have 30 years of looking at them. I'm just so happy to be able to do it again.
You might be the only person.
The little plastic castle is a surprise every time.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions, comments?
This is minor and a little nitpicky.
No, you're good.
So anywhere where it says registered professional engineer or architect, you should know that DISPUS is changing the term registered or licensed to credentialed.
Okay.
So you may just want to be consistent there as well. It was the first thing I noticed. None of what he said I noticed, that I did.
So credentialed engineer and credentialed
Architect, yeah. And you may want to confirm it, but it was in the process of their last round of updates to the different SPSs of the professions.
And on page 27, section 7.12C, it does say professional engineer registered in the state, and it'd be nice to say what state.
State of Wisconsin. Yep.
Yeah.
Good comments.
Anybody else? Pete?
I'm just thinking, it talks about the administration, 7.0, and 7.1, the zoning administrator, that'd be you, right, Adam?
Correct.
That you do all these things, advise applicants and issue permits and inspect and keep records. Are you sure you're qualified to do all these things? And so what resources do you have available to you? Do you go to the city engineer? Do you talk with, I'm not expecting you to, who's reviewing the flood studies? Are you going to sit down and do the H&H analysis and check on the equations and things?
No, so that's ultimately, our engineer, and, this is one of the things where a licensed engineer has to be the one who produces a document, so it's similar to an architect producing plans. You have that inherent trust through their credentialing, through their code of ethics, through their credentialing, that what they produced is of sound rationale and logic. So this might be bad to say, but there's a trust factor you have to give upon the author of that report that they use sound logic in producing that end result.
Yeah, but still, there's a degree of a critical eye involved too. That and again, this came up. I think you said you were big on economics in school and planning and zoning. I don't know if
Floodplain is definitely not.
environmental sciences
but,
and things.
Ultimately,
But you got resources you can.
Yeah, and ultimately, it's
Go on.
one of the responsibilities of this position, and for any, it's one of the responsibilities for this position, so it's just apparent on me to, or any successor to this position, to be at least somewhat knowledgeable of it.
Didn't think I'd hear Pete quote President Reagan. That's nice. Little trust but verify going on there.
Oh, yep, maybe.
Anybody else? I have a couple comments, mostly because I've never heard these terms and I wondered exactly what they mean. I'll go back to page 6 of the document. Under interpretation, number 9, I think that's, I don't know what section it is, right at the beginning. It says, in their interpretation and application, the provisions of this ordinance are the minimum requirements liberally construed in favor of the Common Council. Could you explain that to me, please?
Well, your guess is just going to be a guess, obviously. What I would assume this verbiage to say is that a reasonable person who sits on the council would be in accordance with what's being required or what's being acknowledged in the ordinance. There's other similar worded provisions that basically, quote, a reasonable person would conclude. And we see that in our CUP standards.
The other side of that is that the administration of it is going to substantially conform to existing council policies. So if the council has seen something a certain way, you're going to be liberally allowed to lean into what that previous determination has been. That's what I've taken it to mean. For
Lynn? I would trust you more with how you would decipher this.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to decipher it. Lynn Markham, 302 Georgia Street North. I just wanted to comment, and I'm not sure if it's what's meant in what you just read, Mary, but the state floodplain standards are minimum standards. Local governments can go above them. So that's part of the minimum requirements, and some communities do. They've had significant flooding, and I think it would be interesting to list, when has Stevens Point had flooding, just so people have that history. Yeah. But then some of them say no building in the flood fringe. Some of them say base BSE, I think maybe BSE plus 2 feet.
That's typically the most.
So yeah, there are different versions of it.
Yeah.
I have another question on the next page. Under severability, again, it's like I've never heard it termed this way. Should any portion of this ordinance be declared unconstitutional or invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction? Anybody know? Might have a guess what a court of competent jurisdiction.
Whoever gets whatever slice of the judicial system is allowed to hear your case.
Makes sense. What district court has
wherever you
jurisdiction,
end up,
Court of Appeals.
if they are the people that are allowed to actually pass judgment on the
Competent
case.
wouldn't be the wouldn't be the best word choice, but
Probably not.
Seems like
Qualified?
some of this is way more
that's state code for you.
obscure
Well,
than the language needs to be for something like that. Just say,
and I guess FEMA too, so some of this
by
is
a legitimate state court.
yeah.
Anyway, it's just the pedanticness of the language. That's really about all I had. I figure it's pretty much what the DNR and the state and FEMA dictate anyway, so. Any other questions, comments from the audience? Any of the commissioners? Well, we aren't going to take any action, so do you want to go on to the shoreland zoning ordinance then?
Yeah, so this is going to be a shorter presentation, just one slide, and it's also a lot shorter ordinance. So what I wanted to do, I'm just going to scroll to this section in my notes. So just wanted to kind of talk about the 30,000-foot view of what this shoreland wetland ordinance would consist of and what it does not consist of. So the intention of this shoreland wetland, this ordinance, is to act as an overlay district. We'll talk more about overlay districts in the next agenda item, but really the crux of this ordinance is talking about wetland areas in close proximity and adjacent to shoreland areas. So really how it applies to the city, generally speaking, obviously there's outliers, but two most predominant areas would again be the west side of town and then areas along the Plover River. And this is, I think, particularly important for these two areas when we consider potential development, and for the case of the Plover River, when we're talking about future outward growth, particularly of residential homes in that area of the city and within our extraterritorial area. So what this ordinance consists of is talking about allowed land uses within this shoreland area, and then the process for amending these regulations contained within the ordinance. Again, it's not a long ordinance as well, not a long ordinance, and this has been reviewed by the DNR as well. What this ordinance does not cover is more waterway development standards. That's going to be these are sister regulations to one another, but these are the waterway development standards are going to be items that we're going to be talking about in a few months from now. I want to get some of the development standards for the zoning districts that we'll talk about next. Want to get that a little bit flushed out first before we dive into these waterway development standards. But what these standards will consist of, so setbacks for new and expanded uses, engineering standards for shoreline vegetation, land disturbance and fill, bank stabilization, stormwater management, where buildings can be located on lots adjacent to shoreland areas, and then how access for those lots are created.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I have. You're talking about the shoreland, and maybe that'll come up later, but it's a shoreland ordinance, but it's a lot of reference to shoreland and wetlands. And then when it gets to the actual regulations, it seems there's an emphasis on wetlands. And so it's like if you have a shoreland that doesn't have wetlands, these rules don't apply.
Yeah, so it's defined in here what the geographical area is of wetlands from a shoreline. If there's an area of shoreline that doesn't have,
right, but that's.
If there's wetlands that are not located within that distance, then yes, the standards contained in this ordinance will not apply. However, the standards that we'll talk about later on this year, setbacks from buildings, building location, that'll all be covered. They'll all be applicable for those lots.
So I'm, again, kind of in a quandary about why this is a shoreland ordinance when it sounds like it's a riparian wetland ordinance.
Yeah.
So like shoreland, are there setbacks for construction? Clearing vegetation, management practices, whether there's a wetland there or not. I think shorelands, merit some type of protections and regulations, but you're implying that will come later in a different?
Yeah, so they'll come later. Really, these standards are a lot more, there's a lot more standards, a lot more regulation in place for properties within a wetland area close to a shoreland, 1,000 feet, versus those that do not fall within a delineated or potential wetland area. I guess, I know it's confusing because these two ordinances, these two provisions kind of go hand in hand with one another. For what's in the packet today is we're more limited in our ability to regulate because, again, these are more DNR standards that they are imposing on us to set in place. Some of these items that we'll be talking about later, the clear cutting rules, the setbacks, there's a little bit more discretion on the municipal level of what, for example, building setback, of what that particular number ought to be. Right now in our current ordinance, we have it that 30 feet's the minimum building setback from the ordinary high water mark, where I believe, and Lynn, you can correct me if I'm wrong, at least for municipalities, there's a lot more discretion versus what's stated in the county zoning ordinance and county statute.
I'm sure Jeff could give this talk, but under the county shoreland ordinance, the setback is 75 feet. So that applies to all the unincorporated towns, whereas 30 feet currently in the city ordinance. I also wanted to respond to, the different names of the different pieces here. Typically, there's a shoreland ordinance within a given jurisdiction that includes both the setback, the buffers, and the shoreland wetland piece. So you could fold that together, or you could keep it separate, whichever way. If you don't fold it together, I would recommend calling this part of it the shoreland wetland ordinance, because that's what it is. I also see value in putting those setbacks and buffers in the individual zoning districts, so that when people are reading, oh, I'm R2, they see, oh, here's the shoreline setback that applies to R2.
Make sense?
So,
actually, since I have you here, if you wanted to touch on your slide.
Yeah, I can touch on it. This is really related to what Adam said you're going to get to later, but certainly I can touch on it. So this is just talking about shoreline zoning. The main point, you don't have to read all the text, but the main point is if you look at the left image and you look at the right image, there are a number of differences. You can see on the left-hand side, you've got that vegetation along the shoreline, not on the right-hand side. I'm not a great artist, but the brown along the shoreline on the right-hand side is meant to show shoreline erosion, which is what happens when you take out the vegetation. The bank is easily eroded. Because of erosion, you obviously have sediment going into the water that both causes the algae bloom, the green strip that you see there, as well as the sediment that goes down to the bottom of the lake or the river. And that sediment covers the fish beds, and then a lot of fish don't hatch, and so your fishery goes downhill. But one of the main points, I'm not sure if it's illustrated the best here, is when you push the home back, like shown on the left, rather than right by the shoreline, it allows you both during construction as well as later on to protect the bank by having the vegetation holding it in place. So that's the main point. Can I comment on I'm not sure if you consider it shoreland wetland or not, but a wetland comment. So I saw, the state language about shoreland wetlands. I would also suggest considering a wetland setback so that you're not building a home at the very edge of a wetland, setting it back 25 or 50 feet so that your structures are stable, so that they're not easily damaged in the future.
It's actually a really good segue to was presented to you folks earlier in the month about that conceptual plat on the west side, since that, we talked about the wetland delineation of that area, so.
Yeah, and filling some of that in, which is not, I don't like that idea, but see what they come with.
Any other questions, issues, concerns? Mr. Schuler?
The same concerns about capital O versus little o, just those same comments, the municipality, the department. On the first page, I guess it's page 55 because there's no page numbers on the draft.
Tisk, tisk.
The purpose statement in 1.2, it says, "It is the purpose of this section to prevent the uncontrolled use of shoreland wetlands." I'm pretty sure it's not this section, but of this ordinance.
I would say section, because this is going to be built into the overall zoning code, and the zoning code is a zoning ordinance.
Okay. Do you call it an ordinance anywhere throughout of it? You refer to it as an ordinance all the way through. And the section implies that 1.21 is going to tell you everything you need to know about the uncontrolled use of shorelands.
Yeah, I see where it comes from. I guess I'd have to look at all the references to the word ordinance to see that it's not going to be this kind of smorgasbord of deciphering everything.
Smorgasbord.
I wanted to use that word just for you.
Thank you. Toward the end of the purpose statement, it says that one of its important goals is to impair the tax base. I was curious about that.
Which
Right under the, right here.
It's the last.
Oh, I see. Couldn't tell you. I don't know what the DNR was thinking there.
Okay.
It seems a little fun. I can ask them.
Okay. And this is model ordinance again,
If
right?
not, that's bold. Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to sneak one in, I guess.
Yeah.
If you go to page 60, number 5 on that page, it says, if the DNR notifies the municipal planning agency, well, it's going to be the
Same
planning
us.
commission, right?
Yep.
It's another one of those kind of model ordinance hangovers.
Correct.
Let's see. If you go to section 2, let's see, where are we here? You know, it's really hard to tell without page numbers, but let me see if I can figure this out.
What page of the overall packet?
So, under section 2.1 on page 56.
56.
It says it says the following maps are hereby adopted and made part of this ordinance and are on file in the Office of the Zoning Administrator.
Yes.
Number 1, pretty straightforward. Number 2, floodplain zoning maps titled and dated, USGS maps titled and dated. Are we just proud that they're dated, or do we want to put a date in there as well? Because I assume that we're using specific reference maps on a certain date, like for the flood maps, it's still the 2009 maps, right?
Yeah.
So if we're going to reference that those are the following official maps, they should have dates on them, probably. That's just my thought on that. I don't know.
Well, doesn't that just imply it's the latest, greatest version?
That's-
Then it
Yeah.
should say latest, greatest version.
Yeah. That would be my one concern of specifically
I'm going to use
listing
the old
here.
map. It just says dated. It's got a date on it. It's just a silly thing to leave vague.
All right. But yeah,
Most
if you put a
recent.
date on it, you'd have to upgrade it each time.
Yeah.
And then
that's-
maps do change, and you don't want to go back to using an old one, so.
Yeah.
So however you want to solve
Yeah,
that, but
I'll do
I don't
like-
think you want to leave it just dated. It's just weird.
Yeah. Okay.
That's about it.
Any other commentary?
Under 2.3, on page 57, the last sentence in that first paragraph, the zoning administrator shall be responsible for initiating a map amendment within a reasonable period. Is that like 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2 months? Is that just vague on purpose, or
So
do we need to maybe say a time? couple of months, 3 months? I don't know.
Yeah, so that is common language in statute. For example, the reasonable time provision is used for the Zoning Board of Appeals section when somebody wants to submit an administrative appeal. In statute, it says that it has to be submitted within a reasonable time. Short answer, it's up to you folks if you want to decide what is a reasonable time. If you find benefit in that.
I think flexibility is probably good there, because things can happen.
Yeah.
And your competent jurisdiction could probably figure that out if it's reasonable.
There we go.
It's hard to believe the pasturing of livestock is okay.
Yeah?
I think of all the up and down the banks that they do. Anyway, as a permitted use, it just seems a little, perhaps, is that something we could tighten up, or is that because the state allows it?
I can ask them.
That's just agriculture getting the way it wants, and these
Yeah.
things don't go if they don't get some support of agriculture, so they make concessions.
It just seems like that's not a good idea, but anyway, that's more a question than anything. So that's really,
Related to asking about that, you could ask if you could set a density standard. It's one thing if you got 2
Good point.
cows out there, it's another thing if you got 200 cows out there.
I don't suspect anybody's going to be grazing any livestock over by McDill Pond, but
I doubt that.
you never know. I do have a question about the map, though. I think this big map down the line here is not quite correct.
Oh, we'll talk about that. That's
Okay.
for the next one, but
Okay. So,
is there anything, I guess last minute, anything else with the shoreland wetland stuff?
anybody online want to comment? I noticed Andrea Olson is online. I haven't, to give her the opportunity in case. Otherwise, we can just keep moving.
Cool.
So,
Oh, I figured you were going to read the agenda item first.
oh,
Sorry,
I'm looking for my copy. It's mixed up in my pages here.
I'm too institutionalized.
The bike ped.
Nope. No, it's on the screen.
Oh, the first review of the draft zoning map and purpose statements. Thank you.
Yeah, so this agenda item I'm expecting is going to be probably the more lengthy, more dense component of it. Just to kind of take a step back, you folks have been reviewing draft sections of this zoning code rewrite for the last few months now, and it's been a pretty slow process in terms of the substance of the sections that you've been reviewing thus far. The purpose statement, kind of the legalese, the severability, abrogation clauses, for example. Really at this point today and going forward the next few months is really when you're going to see that crescendo in terms of the quantity of things that you're going to be looking at and ultimately the level of impact of the map and regulations that you're going to be conferring upon. So what I have here, so the image on the screen here shows just a simple chart showing the correlation between our existing zoning districts and then the equivalent zoning districts as proposed. And I'll go through each of these proposed zoning districts in a little bit on the interactive map. for you folks who are keeping tabs on the packet, or keeping tabs of the zoning map within the packet, that proposed zoning map's on page 66 of the packet. And then also there's the link the hyperlink that I included in the memorandum if you wanted to keep tabs within that interactive GIS map. So just a few disclaimers that I want to say from the jump before getting into the details of these proposed zoning districts. These are mentioned in the memorandum, but I just want to underscore these for importance. First one being is this is the first review. There are going to be a heck of a lot of revisions that occur down the road. You know, what we're going to be reviewing today is solely the proposed zoning districts and how they apply to every parcel here in the city. What today will not consist of is the land use regulations for each of these districts, the development regulations, the dimensional standards for the creation of lots. That'll all get figured out in the months that come, and that's really going to be really the meat of the discussion through this whole rewrite. When it gets to that point in time, I'm sure there's going to be changes that I want to see with the zoning map once you really start to refine what those development standards are. So don't treat this map as the final product. There's going to be changes. What I'm looking to get out of today is more big picture. Talking about these zoning districts, broadly speaking, the intent behind these districts, the quantity of districts based off of these broad land use categories. I'm sure you folks have specific comments about how a particular parcel is proposed to be zoned, right? And that's fair. I guess I would ask if you have a list of specific parcels, email that to me, shoot me a call. I think that'll be helpful for me for keeping track and just to be timely with the conversation that we're having. But again, what I'm looking for is just the structure of these zoning districts, broadly speaking. Next up, so this is going to be focusing just on base zoning districts. There's obviously going to be overlay districts that we're going to be considering. The next time that we're going to be meeting to talk about the zoning code rewrite, we'll focus on that, on all the overlay districts. A number of them are going to be existing districts, like our height limitation ordinance for land in proximity to the city's runway paths for the municipal airport. But we're also going to be looking at some new proposed overlay districts, particularly looking at some hybrid form-based codes along certain commercial corridors. I think a couple other points. I have it included in the purpose statement, but I don't have it shown on the map, and that is the planned development zoning district and the planned industrial development zoning district. I think you folks are generally familiar with what a planned development district is. The reason I don't have the planned development designation shown on the zoning map is I need to figure out what these development standards are first to determine if a parcel needs to continue to have that planned development designation. You know, a lot of our more recent planned development rezonings, think of Banter Apartments, the Convent redevelopment site, Berkshire, I believe Berkshire. They have a planned development rezoning, particularly for density restrictions. Kind of need to figure out what the density restrictions will be for the proposed zoning districts to figure out if that planned development standard or planned development designation is still needed.
It just seems like it'd be really difficult point by point to disentangle a planned unit overlay and break it down into just a regular zoning district. Because there could be so many things in a planned district. So I'd be curious to see how that goes, because it seems like it would be almost prohibitively difficult, but I'm great if it can be done, absolutely.
Yeah, and then the planned industrial development, planned industrial development district, that would encompass the East Park Commerce Center, far southeast side of town. Still plan on having that planned industrial development designation, and really the one development that had this or that invoked this planned industrial development use was lineage. Again, I think primarily for density restrictions. So pretty similar boat there. Going to have it, just a matter of seeing if we still need that designation or not going forward. And then lastly, I'll talk about this briefly in a little bit, but the institutional uses, currently in our zoning map, we have a university zoning district. My intention with the proposed zoning map is to encompass that with the broader institutional zoning district and just include a provision in that zoning district saying, to the effect, any state-owned property shall not be subject to this ordinance and would be subject to the master facilities plan of the university. Because that's really the case right now, and we have a special zoning district in our current zoning code that is really not administered because they administer their own rules as state-owned property. Okay, so now I'm just going to switch over to the map and kind of go point by point. So I'm going to be breaking this up, breaking these up into these broader land use categories, and we'll stop intermittently along the way since I got some probing questions for you folks, and then if there's questions that you as commissioners have as well. So I'm going to start off with kind of the miscellaneous districts, so agricultural, conservancy, park, and institutional. So for the agricultural zoning district, really the only areas where this designation is applied to is the city-owned property off of Old Highway 18, and then the undeveloped land along East Park Commerce Center. Now I will say for the East Park Commerce Center area, I am having interactions with the business park, business improvement district in amending their deed restrictions and protective covenants. Their deed restrictions and protective covenants have land use regulations for this area as well. And we last met as a group maybe about 2 weeks ago, and we had a lot of substantive conversations about what should be the land use regulation in the deed restrictions and protective covenants for this area. Currently, it's delineated in our zoning code by kind of this section line where my cursor is running through. Anything north of that has a heavy industrial designation. Primary focus would be uses that would need need to utilize rail transportation, whereas the southern half would be prioritized more for light industrial uses. We had conversations as a business park bid board about if we should continue that designation, if it should all be heavy industrial, all be light industrial, or something completely different. We had some conversations about, knowing the future land use map for the village of Plover, if there should be some commercial and industrial land uses being sought after along the HH corridor, having the assumption that HH would be expanded to a 4-lane road farther east of where it is located now as the city and the village expands eastward. This is a long way of saying I have the agricultural designation merely as a placeholder right now. I need to get some clarification from this business park bid first to get a final answer of what the zoning designation will be for this area, because I want to keep consistency between these two documents. Yeah.
I was curious if having ag on that parcel, is that to protect existing ag operations on the non-developed portions? Is there a benefit for the current landowners who have it in ag to maintain that zoning, or is that something that can go to something that's non-ag and that would not impact how they can have their operations or what they need to operate?
It can, and to be honest, that's an agricultural use and industrial use. There is a blending in a way of what type of land uses could fall within both broad land use categories. So If there's a desire to, yeah, I could easily have it structured so an agricultural use could be protected still under a
Because I know that
heavier light
sometimes
use.
if someone has a home and it happens to be in a commercial zoning district, there have been circumstances where they have a hard time with a lender getting a mortgage or whatever, or any type of loan because of the way the property was zoned.
Yeah.
I was just kind of, if that extended to the ag type of uses as well.
Yeah, and let's, use maybe an extreme example, but like a slaughterhouse. I think that's inherently both an agricultural type use, but also an industrial use as well. There's kind of a blending of how that land use can apply to more than one category. So, yeah, it's really would be struck based off of how the land use regulations are structured for both of those districts. I think it would be fair and reasonable to allow ag operations within a industrial zoning district. All right.
Some might say agriculture is an industrial practice anyway.
Correct.
Some might say that.
Yeah. So next up, conservancy and park zoning districts. So currently, we have just a conservancy district. The goal with this is to separate city-owned and administered parks as their own separate zoning district. What I will say is I've worked with Director Kramer multiple times. We've chatted multiple times over the last few months, fine-tuning these two zoning districts. There are a couple city-owned and operated parks that he requested not to fall under a parks zoning district, but rather a conservancy zoning district. That would be Parkdale Park on the east side of town, Groholski Park on the south side of town, southwest side of town, and I believe those were the only two.
Sense.
And that was really just because of the inherent makeup of those two parks.
Yeah.
It's really meant to capitalize more of the natural existing features of that and not incite that for land improvement for park use. So otherwise, the conservancy designations are pretty self-explanatory. Lands that are comprised of floodplain areas, wetland areas, etc. But I will say there are some parcels where you could question, hey, why does it have, say, as a residential zoning designation instead of a conservancy designation? Really, there's a few parcels where I had this kind of back and forth thought in my mind of what's the highest and best use of a property. Say if there's a 1 acre size parcel and there's 50% of it covered in wetlands, 50% that is buildable. What type of designation should that parcel fall under, a conservancy or a residential? And so for those situations, it was more just a one-off look and to see, could you reasonably build something there? And if so, what's the highest and best use? Is there reasonable access to those parcels to service some sort of residential use or non-residential use, depending on the area? So again, those situations were few and far between, but really the makeup of this delineation between the conservancy and park districts. And then lastly, the institutional district. Generally speaking, between zoning code and a future land use map, there's certain land uses that categorically always fall under an institutional designation. These would be your schools, your churches, your cemeteries. One of the things that I want to get feedback from you folks, and this is timely since this was talked about with the healthcare center request a few months ago, was healthcare operations. It seems to be split down the middle in terms of municipalities who identify that as an institutional use versus those who identify that as a commercial use. So your healthcare facilities would be facilities like a nursing home, assisted living facility, hospice care, a hospital itself. So one of the things I want to get feedback from you is really just that. What do you feel should be the proper land use category for those types of healthcare facilities? Should it be institutional or should it be commercial? Or do you not have a preference?
Commercial.
Institutional.
Ooh.
Sorry.
The raging fight is on.
All right.
I might be inclined towards institutional just because if you have a healthcare center or a home, I think that there's some merit to kind of acknowledging it will stay that. If it's commercial, it could be a care facility one year and a gas station the next year.
Sure.
So if you have that separate, it gives some stability perhaps to the healthcare side of things.
Okay. Jeff and then Laura?
Oh, no, I just
If you had anything
think that
further.
the healthcare is the most altruistic and saintly profession there is in the world, and they should be afforded every protection possible.
You're saying urban planning ain't saintly?
And I don't know, I have a hard time romanticizing the healthcare industry to give them the benefit of being institutional. That's just my frame of reference on that.
That's also fair, though. I mean, the way healthcare has been commercialized almost makes it feel like it should be business.
Yeah.
But I think making it an institutional use, I don't want to say pigeonholes, but like forces there to be a standard that's not going to flip-flop every year.
Is a pharmacy an institutional use?
No, that is actually considered business.
It
I was gonna
is?
say, I would consider that business.
Okay. Just as I'm trying to figure where we're splitting the hairs.
I figured
all.
that's more retail, that's more of a retail component
Mercantile,
to it.
yeah.
Does the building code, do they have an institutional?
They do have institutional. So under institutional in the building code, I believe hospitals fall and jails.
Okay.
So larger care facilities, essentially, not like a doctor's office.
What about hospice care? Because those range significantly in size.
I would say that might fall under a per bed or per room factor, because you can have a hospice that is 10, or you can have a hospice that is 50 to 100.
Yeah.
Bless those nurses.
I have a Sean Morrow, I'm the alderman, I'm the older person for Area 11. If I remember right, about a year ago, there was a debate with the Marshfield Clinic on 6 to 6, if that was going to be a hospital or a actual clinic, and that was going to determine what the tax is. And they were fighting, it was going to be like $400,000 in taxes, and they were trying to say that they were not a hospital, but something else, but a clinic. And as this panel is very much aware of, it is a business. So I'm trying to classify that as such. That is something that I hope the Planning Commission does take into account, because I believe if they didn't have a helipad, or if they didn't have a certain number of rooms, then they would be classified as a clinic as opposed to a hospital. So ways that the healthcare industry are trying to get around paying their fair share of taxes, that would be a very good point for the panel to, that'd be a good thing for the panel to talk about. Thank you.
Yeah, remember that.
Any other thoughts? So I'm hearing.
Well, I guess, maybe the number of people served kind of comes into play. A small doctor's office versus a clinic, I don't know, a healthcare facility, an aging, if it's, or a hospice that's geared towards 5 to 10, as opposed to, 20 to 50 or 100. I don't know, maybe putting a quantifying aspect to it, whether it's commercial or institutional.
Does, Laura, does building code differentiate number of beds, and if it's?
Just going to tell you how the building code defines
Love it.
institutional. So there are a few different ranges within, but it mainly means people or persons who are incapable of self-preservation without assistance. So it really defines it mostly as hospital or long-term care facilities.
Yeah,
So,
as being institutional, you said
as
that was?
being institutional. Education has its own. So,
Not trying to sound trite, but then where does an assisted living? I feel like that's a gray area.
assistant living is a gray area
Yeah.
because it could also fall under residential in some cases,
Yeah.
depending on the number of beds. In the same way that, what's the term I'm thinking of? It's not a halfway
The
house.
CBRF,
Oh,
the
CBR.
community-based residential facility.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
also is one of those gray areas, right? So I guess define it in the way that you see best, because the way it's defined here is completely different.
yeah. Yeah, we'll do the commissioners and then online. Jeff?
Okay, just curious, like the old Twit Chiropractic Clinic, which became the Noble Clinic,
Yeah.
and is now for lease, what should that have been? If it was for years the Twit Clinic, that was healthcare, and would that have been institutional? And if now it's in its third iteration, would an institutional zoning prevent it from becoming something different as an office?
So I think this is going back to consistency with zoning map and future land use map. Thankfully, our future land use map currently and most future land use maps as they become updated still do have a institutional designation. So really my goal is to have that consistency between the two, and if there's a change that would warrant a change from an institutional use to a commercial use, then really the only process is to go through the future land use map and rezoning map amendment. I think this is a thing that honestly I struggle with, and Laura, this is what you referenced earlier, is the fact that the healthcare industry is quite commercialized when it's unfortunate to say that that's the case, but that's the case. Mm-hmm. And should that unfortunate reality be identified as such in a zoning map? Ultimately, the goal with this new zoning map is to have to the greatest extent possible existing land uses that are permitted by right within their respective zoning designation. Obviously, if there needs to be a rezoning, they go through that process. And remember, the main goal with this zoning code rewrite is to reduce the amount of CUP requests in favor of rezoning requests. So you folks on the council can have that strict scrutiny and that high level of review in ensuring if there's an existing institutional parcel that's proposed to be rezoned to commercial, does that or does that not fit with the context of the broader area? So I guess I say that in that I wouldn't be too worried if for those hypothetical situations down the road where if a pharmacy an existing pharmacy is proposed to be renovated into a clinic, and should that fall within institutional or commercial? Because if they have to go through a rezoning, you folks have the power that be to decide if that's appropriate or not. Any other comments, at least from the commission? We'll start and then online and in person.
I tend to think of institutional more as someplace where people are kept overnight, as opposed to like Stevens Point Orthopedics, where you walk in, you may get surgery, but you go home.
Walk out.
And I look at that more as a business, private clinic, and then versus Spivers St. Michael's. I think that's institutional because it's a hospital.
Right. Hospital versus clinic.
And I think about dimensions over on my street. They've got apartments, and then they've got assisted living, and they've got dementia care. So there's a little bit of everything in one. They've got residential, institutional, and commercial, kind of all in
wrapped up.
one great big huge chunk of property out there. So, but yeah, I tend to think if you stay overnight there, it's probably institutional.
I like that. I like that analogy. Mike?
Well, I was just going to ask, would dimensions be in the wrong spot today? Would you build that in that spot for what we're describing?
It does say that it should be prioritized near residential uses.
Technically is. I mean, personally, I don't think the adjacent residential uses are of compatible density and intensity. I think those residential uses closest to dimension should be a little bit more intense to provide that more gradual transition, but.
Oh, they're all zero lot line. They're not single family until Kingfisher. So it's
Even the zero lot line.
And they're the Songbird apartments as well, so that is kind of a.
Yeah, I guess having Sandpiper serve as that delineation between assisted living facility and zero lot line, personally, I don't think that that's adequate. If that would be a greenfield site and you start from scratch, I'd have those zero lot line homes be a little bit more intense. The land where that falls to be of higher land use intensity to have a better transition. But obviously, we're here. What we have, we're stuck with what we got. So
They're good neighbors.
yeah. Any other thoughts on that question from the commission? All right, then Andrea. No, we can't hear you, Andrea, if you're talking. Yeah, still can't hear you if you're trying to talk. Oh, all right, you were unmuted for whatever reason. All right.
She's unmuted.
Yeah, we just try. Yeah, you were unmuted the whole time. All right. Yeah, you're unmuted, but we can't hear anything.
Darn.
Because I can see your microphone move up and down.
Yeah.
You know what I'm getting at.
Technology. Yeah.
The microphone icon,
Yeah.
not the physical microphone. Gravity has something to say about that. So, all right, I guess.
Trying to talk to, it looks like the mayor. He's like,
Well, that's us. Yeah.
Oh, that's us
I guess we can get going, and because I think she jumped off, and I'm assuming is going to try to come back
Call in
on.
the morning. They could call your office as well.
Correct.
Tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
All right. Then shifting gears, we're going to go to the industrial zoning districts because
Pardon.
of all of the zoning map has to offer, this is the area where there's the least amount of changes. We currently have a light and heavy industrial zoning district. That's the same as what's being proposed. Really, in terms of changes, they primarily focus on two areas. So first one being kind of this area where Hirschner's is and the entry into the entry into the industrial park. This area where my cursor is currently has a light industrial designation. That's not changing. Really, the main changes is where Delta Dental used to be off of Hoover, where Hirschner's is, and then where Chrysler Rock Church is. Really, the thought that I had of having this be under a light industrial zoning designation is that because it directly abuts single-family residential uses, you should try to have a better land use transition for that area. And I guess lastly, I guess this is a good time to bring it up, the institutional uses. You might wonder why I don't have Christ the Rock Church, this parcel where Christ the Rock Church is, as a institutional zoning district. That's because that's a multi-tenant building, superior roofing, contractor offices in the back. Forgot what use is in the middle, occupies the middle section of this space, but that's really the primary reason why I don't have an institutional designation for the parcel. Whichever way you go, you're going to have some degree of nonconformity in terms of land uses, and religious land uses tied to a religious institution. There is case law limiting municipalities' ability to regulate religious land uses. So it doesn't fall under an institutional district, but it's kind of preempted from being discouraged because of other remedies.
I'm assuming they pay a portion of tax based on the profit tenants that are in the building.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the one area, and then the other area is the City of Stevens Point Business Park. So currently, the business park is delineated kind of at this halfway point where my cursor is located. Northern half is zoned heavy industrial, southern half is zoned light industrial. This land use, the zoning map for the business park emulates the land use plan that the deed restrictions and protective covenants for the business park has. Essentially, the northern half is heavy industrial, kind of these row of parcels along, that's Clem's, I believe, is zoned light industrial, and then you get more of your commercial and office type uses on the southern half as you get closer to HH. Otherwise, that's really the skinny for the industrial zoning districts. Again, probably the least amount of change. Jumping gears now to the commercial.
Can I comment on industrial?
Yeah.
I don't have any comments on how they were mapped.
Sure.
The map is a lot.
There's a lot, I know.
Absorb. I do have a couple of comments on the way they're described, these purpose statements.
Yeah.
In both light and heavy, you use the words least obnoxious or nuisance, or more obnoxious or nuisance.
Yeah.
I've never thought of a land use as obnoxious. I think of a few people as obnoxious, but not a land use. I don't know what obnoxious means related to a land use. Nuisance, I get that one. What I think is missing here is the acknowledgement that industrial uses sometimes have public health impacts. And so I would like to change obnoxious to public health or nuisance impacts, and then also include some of those public health things that aren't in there. You know, you've got noise and light and that sort of thing. I would like the potential impacts to be listed in both of the industrial districts, but in addition to what's listed in heavy industrial, light, noise, traffic, vibration, add smoke, other air pollution, or other emissions.
Sure. No, that sounds reasonable.
I've got some language here I can drop off.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you. Perfect. Any other thoughts for the industrial districts first?
And we're not talking about language at this time, just the mapping, right?
If you have, I guess, if it's big picture, feel free to mention it. If it's more kind of grammatical, word choice, I guess if you want to email that to me, that'd probably be better.
Well, that's part of the problem I have with emailing is that nobody gets to discuss it. And you could get like 6 different emails that can kind of contradict themselves about what they're suggesting for the same sentence. That's my only kind of drawback I see on that. But for heavy industrial,
Yeah.
it says here, it is intended that this district be located as a buffer between heavy manufacturing uses and commercial or multifamily. we're talking about the heaviest industrial district we have, so the district itself can't be a buffer. It's a thing, right? So what would it be buffering?
Just pulling up the purpose statement.
Third line.
Third line.
Buffer.
Buffer between. Okay, so I think it could just be worded more clearly. Basically, what the intent of this is that should be located adjacent to commercial or multifamily residential uses.
That sounds reasonable, so however you want to fix that going forward.
So I'd say just, strike out the as a buffer between in favor of adjacent. It is intended that this district be located adjacent to commercial or multifamily residential uses. Something to that effect.
Do we want heavy industry adjacent to multifamily? Should that be separate from residential altogether?
I mean, that's a common land use transition plan to have those two land uses be adjacent to one another, because essentially heavy industrial by its name, highest amount of land use intensity, kind of where that middle ground is would be your light industrial, your multifamily, and then the low end of the spectrum would be more your single family, two family, triplexes, missing middle types of housing, etc. I get where you're coming from, though. Obviously, is it salient to have a residential use close to an industrial use or an industrial mode of transportation? I mean,
You want light industrial and commercial maybe next to the heavy industrial, and those two serving as the buffer to residential, kind of regardless.
We can, yeah. And I think this is, maybe jumping a little bit to the residential chunk, but
exactly what the law says, exactly what you were thinking. So.
Yeah, I was going to say that the light industrial language that got copied into heavy industrial works for light industrial.
So I think that the whole basic point is you want heavy industrial land use to be somewhat isolated from other land uses. I don't know how you go about saying that, but the idea is it needs to be as much on its own as possible because of the possible negative impacts to surrounding land uses. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you succinctly put that, but I think that's the basic.
Yeah.
Next to Plover.
Yeah, and I'm just a little bit curious. We talk about heavy industrial zoning and then heavy manufacturing. Are they the same thing? Heavy
I see.
Industrial is the same as heavy
they're
manufacturing?
two of the same by intention, but in theory, manufacturing should be stricken for industrial just for consistency's sake.
Yep.
Makes sense.
I agree.
But yeah, otherwise, I think Jeff's got my intent is that the heavy industry should be kind of pushed as far back from everything else, and some lesser ones, commercial and light industry, providing the buffer.
Okay.
That'd be an interesting point for the comp plan when you talk about land use, is how, not just that static, old-timey list of what goes next to what goes next to what, but just, I guess, the intent of what you're trying to accomplish with it.
Yeah. All right. Shifting gears now to the commercial districts. So the commercial and the residential districts are the ones arguably where there's the most significant changes. So just gonna go in some order here. First off, so I'm looking on the zoning map, page 66 of the packet, kind of working the way down. First one is the central business district. This is all but identical to what we have currently. Two central business districts, first one being the downtown area. The overall land area of the central business district is generally smaller as proposed than what exists currently, and that's in large part because some of these industrial uses institutional uses that are being proposed under that designation currently fall within that central business designation. That's first area, and then the second area for the central business district would be kind of just north of where Bell's Carle's is, kind of that small pocket of commercial development. Next up would be the neighborhood commercial district. Maybe I'm just going to pause right here, pause the map so the overlay can come back on. So neighborhood commercial district, generally the skinny of it is commercial uses, commercial office type uses that are small in footprint, located on a smaller lot where vehicular modes of transportation are not necessarily the primary, not necessarily the predominant mode of transportation for customers to frequent those establishments. This is probably the commercial district where you're seeing the most increase in the number of parcels that have this designation, and that's just in large part to in our current map, a lot of those current neighborhood commercial uses fall under some sort of residential zoning district. So this is more so upzoning those properties to make it more consistent with the current use of those parcels.
Would that be along the lines of what are they called? We were looking at doing them downtown, but where you got the businesses on the first floor and residences up above. Those are kind of small office, kind of commercial, but residential too.
Correct. Yeah. So, you could think of some of the commercial uses along the 2nd Street corridor just north of downtown. They all have, I believe, the neighborhood commercial designation. You have some of the one-off type of establishments. But yeah, it's a mixture of both singular, standalone uses. I think an example of that would be the dental office, like a block or two away from City Hall, right in front of St. Stephen's off of Ellis Street and Plover Street, maybe. It could be buildings like those and buildings that are 2-story, mixed use, commercial first floor, residential above. The next, I'm gonna shift to the highway commercial district. This is almost identical to the B5 highway commercial zoning district that we have right now. There are a few one-off parcels that currently don't have that designation that this is intended to really make it right. The one thing I'll note for this one, this is more for Mary, so the easternmost parcel, I have been working with Director Kramer. The intention is to split that parcel permanently so that where the house is located, that would have the highway commercial designation, and then the remainder of the land would have the conservancy designation.
I thought at one point we had voted to keep just one little corner and that the rest of this was already in conservancy, but I'm not.
Yeah, it is split zoned right now. To be blunt, I hate split zone parcels because it becomes a pain of administering development standards on a split zone parcel when you don't necessarily know how that parcel is delineated. So the intention is basically how it's split zone right now, emulate that in a land division of that parcel.
Yeah, I think the area where the house is, there's enough land back there that you could put some more small houses or something.
Well, probably,
if you ever wanted to run water and sewer out there.
That's the tricky part.
And then the part in the middle, I think, is appropriate to be conservancy. It's all a drained wetland out there, drained marsh.
Yeah.
So
again, this is an area where it's generally similar to the B5 highway commercial district that we have right now. Next up would be the corridor commercial, and really the intention of this is higher intensity land use, commercial and office land uses that are going to be heavily reliant on automobiles as a primary mode of transportation, and those land uses being located along collector and primarily arterial streets. So some of the areas where that corridor commercial designation would be applied would be where Metro Market is along Main Street, where the dealerships are along Stanley Street and the interchange to I-39, the Division Street corridor from 4th Ave up to the roundabout, and then the Church Street corridor. I think I had it from about Heffron Street, Save-A-Lot, down towards the municipal boundary. Again, really the intention is to have parcels that are located along said streets that can accommodate those types of land uses. If there's a, just say hypothetically, if there is a commercial land use along, I think this is the Armory, I believe. If there's a commercial use along a Jefferson Street or a Dixon Street that's being proposed, and the applicant says, hey, I want to designate that as corridor commercial, because of how that purpose statement is written, essentially saying that the intention of that is to be located along arterial streets, that would be a grounds for me and ultimately you guys as a commission to say, no, the commercial zoning district, corridor commercial zoning district is not appropriate because that parcel doesn't confront an arterial street. Really using the transportation network as the means to delineate what's the most appropriate commercial district. And then the last one is the general commercial district, and to be honest, this is kind of the catch-all type of commercial zoning district, and the intent of this is to kind of better align a land use transition in areas where the development pattern that exists now isn't really ideal or up to snuff. I think one area that stands out is the Church Street corridor from really generally speaking, Heffron Street up to the underpass. In this area, you have a fair amount of commercial uses. However, it directly abuts single-family residential uses to its rear, versus that of the corridor commercial where it's either adjacent to 4-lane roads or to other commercial uses. So this general commercial district is intended to be more as a buffer, more as a transition zone between those types of land uses. So you're going to have more stringent land use allowances for the general commercial district, versus that of the corridor commercial district. You're going to have greater rear yard setbacks for the corridor commercial, for the general commercial district because of its adjacency to single-family homes, versus that of this red shaded area here. So that's really the intent. Again, this is kind of the catch-all type of commercial zoning district, just being cognizant of the fact that it has the potential to be located along land uses that maybe shouldn't be directly adjacent to one another. The other area that I have identified is the Stanley Street corridor, generally from, I believe, Minnesota up to, is that Wilshire, I believe, where you have that similar pattern where you have single-family homes next to office-type uses, clinics, and it just is kind of a hodgepodge. And I'll be honest, we talked about this at a few of the neighborhood meetings with the code rewrite. The Stanley Street corridor and the Church Street corridor, those two areas are the most difficult to apply on a zoning map because you have so much disunity in land uses next to each other.
Those single families on Church and some on Stanley, do those become non-conforming then?
I mean, we'll talk about this in the next few months, but my intention would be that single-family uses would be prohibited in there, so it would be non-conforming.
Okay.
Any other,
Just a comment, central business district, that language seems kind of flimsy to me. And obviously, that was a point that came up with the development downtown, where the argument was, this is a central business district, and we're putting, so, when that happens again, and if the language is vague like this, or not concrete, what does that mean? That means anybody can put anything in there, or?
so really.
You could make a case that anything is a supported use.
Okay, I see where you're coming from. So, I mean, really, the intent from a development standpoint is you have more zero lot line types of buildings where there's no setback provided on any four sides of a building. So, yeah, I think I could include that within the purpose statement to make it more clear that the type of development, the type of buildings that you have in those types of zoned properties relate to that.
Can I just make a statement?
Yeah.
It says this district is established to provide a single contiguous district encompassing the central business district. It's a little circular.
I see, because of the word "or," the central business
just-
district or downtown area.
Yeah, like, there's just something off about it. If it's encompassing the central business district, is it a central business district or is it around it?
I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, couldn't you
Yeah.
just eliminate that central business district and leave it at the downtown area?
Or just
Well-
get rid of both the central business district or downtown area? Because you're
Yeah.
defining what it is.
Yeah.
You don't need to define where it is.
Yeah, and to be honest, I thinking about it a little more, I'd want to shy away from using the word downtown because you also have the land
The other
where
one.
Belts and Carl D's are. That commercial uses that is not part of the downtown. So, yeah, I'll look into it and do some wordsmithing. Jeff?
I'm just sort of thinking, I mean, like, again, what's the point? You're thinking that you have a defined area, historic area, that you're trying to give a certain zoning designation to. And is that based on anything related to the historic preservation boundary? I mean, what place is it?
Not historic preservation because the Belts, Carl D's, that area does not fall within a local or state or fed historic district.
So should Carl D's and Belts be the same?
Yeah, I'm wondering the same because this whole paragraph essentially encompasses the word downtown. Like you refer to it on the next page as the Downtown Targeted Area Master Plan.
That's fair.
Development and maintenance of downtown area, but it mentions nothing about the other space.
I think the tricky part is if I exclude the Belts and Carl D's area from the central business district, is that the development standards for that district, for a commercial district outside of the CBD, is going to have some setback requirement. And those buildings that exist there primarily are built right on the lot line on all four sides. And so that would be my fear. And sure, you separate the zoning districts into two and have the same development standards for each, then it kind of runs the question of what's the point of separating it in the first place if they're two of the same. So I think it comes down to how you wordsmith the purpose statement to
And
have it be all
include that
encompassed.
second location.
Yeah. Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, anything else?
We got a from
Commercial?
Mr. Beacom.
Well, just, I mean, I understand the lot line piece that bonds them, but the other thing that you reference here is a central business district for downtown, which is true, is it's kind of that pedestrian-friendly shopping center. I don't know that I would say that about the south side. You know, I mean, I don't walk from
Fair.
Belts to whatever else.
You go to Belts or you go to Carl D's?
Yeah, and then you
But
go
you-
home. You know, so, but downtown is kind of meant to be that place where you hop from one to one. That's unique. I don't know that I would group the two based on that idea of a business district.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
You must be from that district.
I am. Ginger Keemer, Alder for District 3. Actually, I think Belts Carl D's is technically District 5, but we're all really close together. I guess, I mean, this is sort of a, I don't know if this point needs to be made, but there's such a concentration of residents around that area that I think Belts and Carl D's are heavily walked to by the people, half mile or so surrounding that. I also wonder too, if calling that sort of ice cream district or Belts Carl D's central business district similar to downtown, I think one of the things there is, even though the Belts district is not historic per se and falls under the historic district, it is a historic in character. Those are, maybe not the two ice cream shops, but like there's a optical.
The Node.
Yeah, that are, these older kind of 2-3 story buildings. And so there is some sort of historic character, with the setbacks being closer to the street. So I do see, I don't know if there's a way to reference that at all, but I do see some sort of similarities, even though, the downtown one is clearly much larger and whatnot, but just some thoughts.
I almost feel like it's closer to a neighborhood commercial district than it is.
But that has different zoning implications and setback requirements, and that's
that
the
we'll
concern.
discuss down the road.
I think you just need to include that second location as like its own little blurb in your purpose statement.
Yeah.
However you want to define it.
Asterisk. And then.
And then.
Yeah.
I like that. Andrea?
Oh, we still can't hear you.
Yeah, I see you're trying to talk, but we can't.
Is your
hear ya.
volume down?
I don't think so. Yeah, I can't hear anything.
That's frustrating.
I don't know, did you have this issue last time? Mary, whenever this?
I know sometimes the mayor forgets to unmute people.
No, we're unmuted. Yeah, she's unmuted. Yeah,
But from here,
yeah, we're,
what's the, is
Yeah,
the
we're
red
unmuted.
one ours?
no, that's her video. No, this is our audio.
Okay.
As you can see the
Yeah.
But is the volume turned up? Is your speaker?
Yeah, it's
all
up
the way?
to, yeah, I'd say, yeah, I don't know what's going on
Having
at the
some
moment.
technical issues here. Sorry about that. For
I think
those
she had a chat there,
online.
didn't she? or
Yep, she
comment?
was sending some of it. So I'd say at least for the interim, if you want to just continue to send your comments in the chat
Yeah,
until if or when we get it.
it's,
Yeah, there is the call-in information on the agenda. Good point.
Do you want to read it out so maybe or throw it in the chat so she can use it?
That wasn't me.
Yeah, there's a board.
That was
Yeah.
me.
Is that still there?
Managing a pile of papers.
Yeah.
There's a number of things. A couple taverns, restaurant, kitty corner, convenience store.
Row of.
Bowling alley.
You got sweats across the street.
I got these in though.
that's,
All right, I think
that's way
think
beyond me.
probably
Still
continue
good.
going at least for right now.
Okay.
Bowls, the friend was a big
See if,
fan. Squishy.
So I guess commercial district broadly speaking, we ran through all of them. Comments, questions, concerns?
Do you think it covers what you need?
I do.
Then, yeah, I don't have any other questions besides that.
I think in total, this would represent, well, we got 5 commercial districts currently, and what's proposed is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So same number, it just
Defines
more
it.
reallocation of it. Yeah.
Better defined,
Yeah.
yeah.
Are we missing any opportunities in the map to add extra commercial spaces or districts?
So are you asking to create new districts or or add more properties that are applied a commercial zoning designation?
Either?
So I think for the adding more properties to apply to have a commercial designation, where that comes into play could be the Stanley Street corridor, because in the neighborhood plan that was adopted, neighborhood plan included as part of the comprehensive plan, within the future land use map, I'm blanking offhand, but I believe it was basically up to from Minnesota to maybe Wilshire, or maybe this north-south street, not sure offhand, Indiana, is where it has I think it was medium density and commercial designation, and it defines what medium density residential is. And then gradually, as you work your way north and east, you increase the intensity of residential uses and commercial uses. So that would be one area where if you wanted to make, here you have multifamily, which we'll get to in a little bit, the darker brown, but if you wanted to make more of these tan color, the single family designations, be commercial already, that would be one area. I think it's reasonable to conclude, based off of the neighborhood plan and just based off of the development pattern in this area, that lots along Stanley Street, say in this block between Wilshire and North Point, that's going to have some commercial land use.
Over time, it would be logical for it to convert to.
Yeah, and I think it begs the question, should we be proactive and apply that designation already, or wait until when a development occurs so that you folks can have that level of strict scrutiny when the time comes? I was working on this under the assumption of the latter, where have a property be zoned in a way that current land use is conforming with code. However, when a development comes in, it may not require a CUP, but it would require rezoning, and then that's where you, as a commission, have more discretion, more latitude. But yeah, going back to your question, Laura, that would be the area.
I have a comment.
Alder Morrow.
Sean Morrow, Area 11. A lot of that's in my area, and when I've canvassed that area, a lot of those places are also they're also not family-owned, but rentals. And there's a lot of those houses are also in Hull as well.
Yep.
And so I know we're always looking at housing stock and so on, and it seems like along that corridor we have several strip mall type businesses that are in there. We have the orthodontic office is there. We have the eye clinic is there as well. But then on the other side, we have a lot of residential. Mm-hmm. It seems like it's slowly starting to mature into more of a business area at this point, really. But there still are a lot of people who do live along that area. And I know throughout the years, a lot of those homes as well been slowly brought into the city of Point as well. So something to be able to chew on for a bit.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
See, Andrea came back in. Do you want to give her another try?
Yeah. Yeah, Andrew, if you can hear, if you wanted to provide commentary. All right, yeah, same boat. I can see that you were talking earlier, but I don't know if there's stuff unplugged on our end or what.
I have no idea.
Might be her.
I can barely use my smartphone.
Settings is probably the way it is.
It could be. Yeah, I'm not sure what's.
I've tried 2 phones and a computer.
Yeah. You gotta love technology.
What is your output setting correct?
easy answer is beats
Yeah.
me.
This community room.
Yeah,
So
I've never
weird.
changed it, so I'm assuming it would be.
Okay,
Yeah.
tried. I'm sorry, Andrea.
No, yeah. Okay. I guess last item is going to be the residential uses. So I'm going to be splitting these up into two clumps. First one being the mobile home and multifamily districts. So for the mobile home, pretty self-explanatory. Existing mobile home parks would be applied to mobile home zoning designation. Currently, we have a future land use category of mobile home, but we don't for a zoning designation. And it is a hodgepodge of how mobile home parks are currently zoned. Summer's Holiday Park is zoned light industrial. The park along Naval Street, I'm blanking on the name offhand, is zoned B4 commercial. There's just, it again is another, and half of them are split zone, and it becomes really difficult to apply setback standards to. So again, intention, existing mobile home parks be identified under a mobile home zoning designation. And then the multifamily districts. So my general rule of thumb for the creation of these residential districts is I wanted to stay clear from using the words single family or two family, and then also using the terms density, because how you decipher density, what is considered low or high density, is different than what I could versus what John Doe could down the street. The differentiating between the multifamily was difficult, so I still use the low and high density differentiation in the name of the district. However, in the purpose statement is where there is that differentiation. So I believe it's the 20 dwelling units per acre is the differentiation between low and high density. Just to put that into context, so for some of the recent developments, I don't have the numbers in front of me offhand, but the duplex development off of North Point in Georgia, I believe, fell within around 8 to 10 dwelling units per acre. And the calculation does not count roadway, so it's literally just the dimensions of the lot to calculate what the density is. I know some folks utilize road right of way to calculate for calculating the dwelling units per acre. I think that's just a fishy, to be blunt. But really, that's the differentiation. So you see, for that calculation, I applied it to every multifamily development here in the city, and then responded accordingly for if they fell under that low density or the high density multifamily. And generally speaking, it's pretty self-explanatory. I guess what areas, developments that you would perceive to be high density are high density. Think of the convent redevelopment site, the apartments right behind it, the apartment complex on the opposite side of Spash, John's Drive. That development would all fall under the high density residential. The low density, one goal that I had with creating this zoning district is we've had a lot of requests where you have more than one duplex on the same lot. And currently they fell under our R3 single and two family zoning. What I wanted to do is to have those types of developments fall within a multifamily zoning district, because, we'll use this project specifically. You got 5 duplexes on one lot. Sure, the land use is 5 individual duplexes, 2 family buildings, but in theory, in application of how land use is, how the land is utilized, you have multiple residential uses on the parcel. So in theory, in my opinion, they should then have a multifamily designation, even though it's just duplexes on the parcel. So just being a little bit more cognizant, transparent, whatever word choice you want to use, of the intensity of residential living that's on the lot versus that of just what type of housing unit do you got on the parcel.
It's going to be a process to get used to 20 units per acre as being low density.
And I'll be fully blunt, you can change that number to anything you want. I just use that as, really, I came up with the 20 by the 20 unit threshold by looking at other municipal codes. Some of them utilize 18 or 20 as the cutoff, and then really looking at the existing multifamily development here in the city.
I just think the average person, they're going to think an acre of land with 20 units on it is not going to seem
Dense.
Yeah.
low density.
No, and even before I got to this thought process of we're going to have two multifamily districts, low and high, I was going back and forth of should there just be one multifamily district? Some communities have 3 multifamily districts, low, medium, and high. And then it just becomes like we're having excess zoning districts just to have excess.
Well, the thing that you'd be looking for is what are the unique site development characteristics that would differentiate the two, right? What are the issues?
What's the difference between the zoning requirements?
Or the actual types of development? How differently do they need to be treated when one's a much lower density, multiple probably unit or multiple building property versus one that's got a ton of units on it?
Yeah, so I mean the massing of a building that would be constructed on there would be one differentiated factor. You know, the low density would be more of your duplexes, your triplexes on a parcel, whereas a high density would be like your Berkshires, your Convents, Banters of the world. And I think just inherently, I know this becomes a moot point for some areas with the elimination of parking minimums, but obviously high-density residential living is going to have a higher parking demand versus low density. And in terms of development standards, personally, your low-density multifamily districts are going to be more closely adjacent to duplex development or single-family development. So I would see those types of development standards under a low-density district be more stringent than what a high-density would be, because typically a high-density multifamily district would be, based off of the purpose statement, would be closer to your commercial uses, potentially your industrial uses, your non-residential uses, that it would be more amenable to have those two land uses be side by side with one another.
And I think the only way the distinction's going to become clear is when you get that project proposal that's going to make you go, man.
Yeah.
You know, the upper end of the low density is going to be what kind of gives it clarity, and you can't, I guess, predict what that'll be with complete certainty now. So
yeah, and if there's another way of,
can be, I guess,
if there's another way of differentiating those types of development pads, those two types of developments, multiple duplexes on one parcel versus a Banter, Berkshire of the worlds. I mean, I'm all ears. I mean, this was it was the toughest point in drafting this map of how do you address the multifamily developments, because it's kind of all unique upon itself. There's not a great deal of uniformity between several multifamily development areas.
well, you can take heart knowing you'll be criticized either way.
Do you view high-density, low-density multifamily similar to heavy industrial, light industrial in terms of transition into other use?
Yes. And that's kind of what I was referencing earlier, where high-density multifamily would be closer to your, would be adjacent to your non-residential uses, commercial, institutional uses geared towards that, whereas if there's a multifamily development request that's adjacent to single family, then it should be applied the low density designation.
So north side yards isn't getting built, if that's today.
Correct. Yeah, I would, because of its adjacency to single family, I would say single family, two family by way of roadways, yeah.
Yet it was intended to have an urban design to it, close to the street, higher density, to sort of be an edge for the downtown. So that's another interesting little kind of tension point.
And I have actually north side yard under here, under that central business district, and the intention for the central business district was to combine the present B2 central business transition district with the B3 central business district. Consolidate that all into one, because very few parcels are applied that B2 district. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a reasonable conversation to be had. Obviously, that's where the downtown target area master plan blends in, and there's idealized development within that part of the downtown, since it's downtown fringe. So you have layers with that.
Right, and, like the north side yard, the first floor is commercial. How does that affect the multifamily? Does high density, low density allow commercial aspects to those developments? And kind of my understanding is that the high density residential is apartments. Is that?
That's a great point. Yeah, I would foresee high density to allow for that mixed use development, like I know it's vacant first floor commercial or white box for banter, but that type of style where you have commercial on the first floor and then apartment complex above, apartment units above within the same complex. Whereas the low density would be strictly your single family, two family. Well, you're missing middle types housing.
I like the example you had up there because, right, you had those 5 structures, duplexes on a parcel. I don't know what density that came out to be, but that is, kind of individual residences to a degree, but kind of high density individual. And so that kind of, to me, would be representative of the low density multifamily, as opposed to apartments or, extending that to a full block. It's taken up a quarter of the block for those 5 buildings, 10 families, or 10 residences. But if you extended that to the other side of the road and down, is that, I don't know how big is that parcel that those properties are on?
I know I can click on these. I don't know if it says the lot acreage.
But 10 residences per acre.
1.25 acres is that parcel.
So that's 10 residents per acre about. And like Jeff was saying, you got 20 residences. 1 acre, some people think that's my residential lot, one house.
Yeah.
And that's a good question. I think this is a worthwhile debate and coming up with a number and sticking with it as absolute and irrevocable.
Yeah. And I can look at the purpose statements in between the two and see if there's ways I can make it more clear.
It's a point to ponder going forward.
Yeah.
I do like the general idea of where you're going. You're going to have those pieces that didn't work or don't fit under the current that you're building, but I do think being more purposeful with that transition. That said, when some hot development comes in front of us and everybody's dying to have it, then we start breaking rules. But the point of the rules is,
To be able to break them.
Yeah.
And have a conversation about it.
But yeah.
Andrea, I guess we'll try. I see you raise your hand.
She might have something in the chat that she's added.
She did. I can see she's trying to talk because her phone.
I feel horrible. We can't get this to
I hate
work.
to ask, but is the speakers for the system turned up? not your computer, but like, is there actual volume control now
Yeah, they can
for
hear
the
it.
speakers?
Yep.
No, okay,
Yeah.
thank
We
you.
got this chat. Lynn?
If I can comment just a bit on your multifamily residential.
Yeah.
Right here, just south of the 5 duplexes,
Yep.
there are some 2-story fourplexes that to me seem very friendly to fitting in with single-family residential or one-unit residential, whatever you want to call it. They actually have a lot more landscaping, a lot more trees because they're 2 stories, so they don't take up the entire footprint, which
Yeah.
this one is pretty close to taking up the entire footprint. So to me, some of it is how much space for vegetation do you have left on the lot? Or is it completely built out, which this one is pretty close to?
Yeah. It's a good point. So I think I got some good marching orders for the multifamily. I guess any other thoughts, comments? Okay, then the last chunk will be the remaining of the residential zoning districts. So just gonna kind of go down in order. So the non-sewered residential, that's essentially single-family residential lots, not connected to city sewer and water. The intention behind this is to more so serve as a legacy zoning district, whereas think of non-conforming uses over time, the amount of non-conformities decrease because those uses become conforming. In the case of these non-sewered lots, think of there's homes on the, say, to the east of the airport. I know this is probably a fallacy any time in the short term of city extending utilities out into here, but if and when at some point in the future, 20, 50 plus years, then obviously these parcels would be rezoned outside of the non-sewered residential into its appropriate sewered residential districts. So then the remaining residential, more single-family, two-family plus residential uses I have broken up into 3 broad categories: suburban, traditional, and urban residential. So suburban residential 1 and suburban residential 2. Essentially, the crux of these suburban zoning districts in terms of geographical location, the intent is for it to be kind of on the periphery of, for the most part, on the outside of I-39 and the Plover River. So I know it's, for whatever reason, the overlay doesn't extend or is taken a bit when you're panned out this far, but essentially, if you follow my cursor along Interstate 39, going down to McDill, and then following down to the Plover River, down to McDill, kind of all that area to the east and to the north would have either that suburban residential 1 or suburban residential 2. There's a little bit of a outlier in this part, which I'll get to in a little bit. So suburban residential 1, intent is strictly single-family residential uses. Would have the largest lot standards and developments and most stringent development standards relative to other single-family development in the city. The suburban residential 2 would be districts that would permit at the very least single-family and duplexes as being permitted by right. This suburban residential 2 would in part be similar to our current R3 zoning district. So you see Forest Creek, lots off of Sandpiper, off of Windy Drive, have that suburban residential 2 designation. That would be the intent right there, of to have a single family, 2-family be permitted by right. Traditional neighborhood, traditional residential 1 and 2, this would be areas, again, when you're looking kind of on the west side of the I-39 McDill Pond area, closer towards downtown. So the traditional neighborhood 1 is basically, for the most part, areas that do not fall under our current traditional neighborhood overlay district within kind of this broad geographical area outside, kind of on the inside of I-39. So this, kind of broadly speaking, where these traditional residential 1 district is located. So north of Maria, once you get east of Michigan, kind of along Price Street, Simonis, Ridge, Green, in this area, kind of the little pockets along Jefferson, Dixon, Center, and then once you get along the homes on the west side of McDill Pond. The intent with here is single family would be permitted by right. There were, through these neighborhood meetings back from the spring, summer, and fall, there was the intent, or there was the desire of having a blending of more higher density types of residential uses within these areas, but also being cognizant of the home ownership aspect. So one of the things that I'm having in the back of my mind, and I know we'll talk about this in the months that come, is as far as land use regulations, is for this traditional residential 1, have single family be permitted by right, have 0 lot line duplexes be permitted by right, because at least for those types of 0 lot line duplexes, there's a greater likelihood that would be owner occupied. Thank you. We're over 2 hours in. Owner occupied. Whereas if we would allow duplexes across the board, then yes, then there you're going to have you're going to incite more renter occupied housing in those areas, which frankly is not consistent with the current usage of those areas, and we have to be very cognizant of not having renter occupied housing spread into those areas as well, at least. So that's where kind of the thought process in the back of my mind in drafting this map is have these 0 lot line duplexes be allowed by right. So you have an uptick in the land use intensity, but still promoting home ownership within those areas and not messing around with the dynamics that currently exist. Traditional residential 2 is basically the areas of our current traditional neighborhood overlay district with some exceptions. The exceptions would be, this was identified in that policy recommendation report a few months ago. So the areas kind of south of Noble, east of Michigan, kind of in this area was identified of encouraging duplex uses and a little bit more higher intensity types of development. Likewise, the area between where we are, where Gerke Park is, and the hospital, kind of in this area of having that allow for higher intensity residential uses compared to what exists right now. And then I also added, this was not in the report, but I added the Dixon Street corridor for having this traditional neighborhood 2 designation, primarily to serve as that land use transition, because at least in my opinion, you have a lot of industrial and commercial uses on the south side of Dixon, and we mentioned this earlier on. Should roadways by itself serve as that buffer, serve as that separation between industrial uses and single family homes? So at least the intention of having this traditional residential 2 is greater allowances of higher intense residential uses so that it would over time spur a more gradual land use intensity as you're working your way south to north. And then lastly, I know we went through a lot. Lastly would be the urban residential district. So this would essentially be areas on the periphery of downtown, generally bounded by 4th Ave, Division, Wisconsin, and then the river. So this is the area where there were kind of 2 thoughts going through my mind. And I think these are conversations we haven't had much as a group, but I think we need to have a honest conversation as we're looking 20, 40 plus years out in the creation of the zoning code. And that how can we best encourage existing property owners to upkeep, to maintain their homes. And this is an area where they're not universally, but could there be more encouragement for upkeep, for maintaining their buildings? Are there some structures that maybe are not beyond a state of disrepair, but need some improvements to maintain the structural integrity? Yes. And so the intent with this area is to have the most lenient development standards as a way through regulatory reform, number one, encourage the maintenance and the improvements of those parcels over time. And then the second one, and I think this is the uncomfortable conversation to have, and I'm cognizant of that, but that's if there's areas of town where the existing development on a parcel is beyond a state of disrepair and there needs to be, if a property owner seeks to raise that building, or if there's multiple buildings that a property owner wishes to buy to build something new in its place, where should that area be geared towards? Where should those situations be geared towards? And what should be the desired land uses in those areas? And thinking through this, the area around the periphery of the downtown is an area that screamed of, if there's ever redevelopment in those several block radius from the downtown, this is an area where it would be most appropriate to have higher intensity of residential development. You allow for more of the triplexes, fourplexes, potentially types of residential uses because of its adjacency to downtown, and in turn help support the downtown over time. The last reason why I separated this as its own district is just based off of the existing development pattern. Typically have lesser building setbacks in this area than versus, say, on the north side. Once you venture north of 4th Ave and you get closer to Maria. So the intention is, at the very least in the short term, have this urban residential district be applied the most lenient development standards, so the majority of homes within this area become legal conforming structures. So both looking in the present / short term, but also looking into the long term as well. And again, it's an uncomfortable conversation to be had, but that's the beauty / struggle of a zoning code, is yet you have to be both short and long term thinking. So that's my soliloquy for the single 2-family plus districts. Thoughts, comments, questions, concerns?
You wore us down.
You wore us out. We're ready to go another 2 hours.
Still got the bicycle plan.
Yep.
Well, that won't be as long. I promise you there.
Still have to pack it.
I was going to
The
suggest,
presentation won't be as long.
I was going to suggest a
Throwing down the
5-minute or
gauntlet,
10-minute suspension. I need to get up and walk around. I can hardly
Sit still longer.
sit still without.
Do we need to make a motion for a short
So,
recess?
I don't think we need to.
I think you
I think we
technically do.
just, don't we just, doesn't the mayor just say we're?
Well, you're running the meeting, so.
Yeah, your chair.
Well,
I don't know
maybe
about 5 or 10,
Chair
maybe a
will
couple
take a
minutes.
point of
Yeah.
privilege and say, let's
Do 5 minutes.
Let's do 5 or 6 minutes if people want to get up and stretch. We'll come back after a short break. Thank you very much for accommodating the chair. Commissioner Schuler.
Getting back to Adam's question before the break, I think the work so far with the the descriptions and the mapping for where we are is good. Thank you very much for that. And I think that whenever we get into further work within the districts themselves, maybe things may be tweaked, but right now I think it's a really good place to start from.
Yeah, and that was going to be my kind of big question, my broad question to you folks post recess is right track, wrong track, 30,000 foot view, good what you're seeing, major hurdles.
Right track.
Seeing head nods, yes.
Yeah,
Logic is sound, what I've heard of it, so
yeah.
Okay.
we are on track as far as I'm concerned.
So I guess for timeline's sake, as I mentioned, we're kind of at the crescendo now, going, increasing kind of the output that is going to be looked at and either blessed or back for refinement amongst this group. So my intention is next time we meet, we're going to be doing the overview of the overlay, the review of the overlay district. So same structure as what we had here, except going over the overlay districts. There's not going to be as many overlay districts, so won't take as long. The intention to do that, and then the land use development lot standards for, I'm going to call the miscellaneous districts, so the conservancy, parks, institutional, kind of those types of districts, and work your way forth. I'm guessing it'll probably be sometime second half of February, unless March. Plan Commission is looking awfully light, but we'll keep tabs.
Okay. All right. We'll move on then to item 5, presentation and discussion on the draft Portage County Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan.
Okay. So, just for some background here, so I'm sure some of you folks are aware, on the county level, we currently have a bicycle and pedestrian plan that was adopted in 2014 or 2015 as part of federal grant dollars that were received about 2 years ago now through the U.S. Department of Transportation. We received $200,000 to, in part, update the countywide bike ped plan. The draft bike ped plan is before you. I'm going to give just a quick overview of what this plan is, and then really ask for just general questions or comments. So the structure of the plan is pretty reminiscent of any long-term plan that you folks have dabbled with, regardless of topic. The different chapters are shown on the slide here on the screen, and we'll go over some of these, touching over the highlights in a little bit. So starting out with the first section of the plan addresses the short-term action plan. So the structure can be a little different, but generally a long-term plan has some sort of short-term policy guide saying, here are the specific implementation strategies, the specific policy recommendations that we want you to achieve in the short term being, as identified in this plan, being 1 to 5 years. For some plans, the short-term recommendations are included within the goals, objective, policy section. What we asked Vandewall to do is to make this upfront and apparent early on in the plan, have these short-term action plans be identified. So the two broad areas for this short-term action plan is, number 1, to build a network, focusing more on the infrastructure piece of it. And then the second one being to grow the culture, and this is focusing more on the education and encouragement realm of promoting bicycling and walking here in Portage County. Next one, section 2, is kind of the overview of the plan, the planning process, how this plan came to be. And then the third chapter, identifying the case for bicycling and walking. And the infographic on the right-hand side of the slide here, I think, really identifies the question that needs to be asked for any long-term plan, and that's, why should we care? what's the point of this? How does this value me as an individual, as a reader, if at all? And so here it identifies the realized and the non-realized reasons for why bicycling and walking should be promoted, the most obvious and those that are maybe not as obvious. Chapter 4 of the plan is really the data specifics, the data heavy portion of the plan. So some of the two graphs that I have on the slide, this is census data, differentiating the use of bicycling and walking by jurisdiction here within Portage County, and then broader geographical areas across the state of Wisconsin. Again, really not shocking. Point is higher usage of those biking and walking. Chapter 5, this is more of the engineering specifics, so giving an explanation, an overview of the different facility types for bicycle infrastructure and for walking. So what's for biking, for example, what's the difference between an urban shoulder versus a protected bike lane versus an unprotected bike lane? Some good some good graphics as well, differentiating each of them. Chapter 6, and this is really the meat of the plan. So the vision, the goals, and the strategies. This is really where you hunker down into these specific policy recommendations. And for here, the general goals, this is all that I have on the slide, is 6 goals in total. Not going to read them, but again, that's shown on the slide. Really focusing on, in the bike ped planning world, the 5 different E's, focusing on engineering, evaluation, encouragement, education, kind of nestling all of those different categories of bike ped planning into these broad goals within the plan. And then kind of siphoning these down a little bit further, Chapter 7 focuses on the non-infrastructure recommendations. And I have these broken down again into these different E's. So the recommendations in the encouragement realm, in the education realm, in the equity and accessibility realm, and then the evaluation realm. In the last, really, post-2020, there's been a shift away from using enforcement as a mechanism for evaluating bike ped planning, shifting away from that to more equity, diversity, and inclusion. So for here, this plan focuses more on the equity and accessibility piece, but there are components of the enforcement realm interwoven within other sections in this chapter. And then the last really substantive chapter, I think this is chapter 9, focusing on the infrastructure recommendations. The 2 maps of note would be map 9.1, so this is the existing and proposed bicycle facilities within the urban area. Urban area would be the city, villages of Plover, Whiting, Park Ridge, and then generally portions of the town hall and town of Plover. So here it shows where the existing bike facilities are, along with the proposed bike facilities. And for those proposed bike facilities, it differentiates by the type of facility that's being recommended. And then lastly, map 9.2 is the sidewalk inventory and recommendations. Similar boat, where are there existing sidewalks, where are there proposed sidewalks, and then for the proposed recommended sidewalks, it's differentiated between low priority, medium priority, and high priority. So our City's Bike Ped Commission we had probably a good hour-and-a-half long conversation last week going over this plan in more detail. For the scope of this commission, I think these 2 maps, map 9.1 and 9.2, are going to be key for getting input from you all, because anytime that there's a development that's proposed and there's a sidewalk proposed for construction on this map, or bike facilities proposed to be offered on this map, or proposed as shown on the map, there's a development proposal, we want to make sure that that's incorporated within the site plan design. Likewise, this is more Public Works Department realm, but if there's any street reconstruction projects as well, we want to make sure that these bike and sidewalk facilities are incorporated into the street design. So for these two maps, honestly, it's probably better off if you have specific comments to email them over to me in the days ahead. We have some time, but I guess last thing before kicking it back, just timeline's sake, I think the goal is, so this, the presentation of this plan is going before all the other partnering municipalities over the course of January and February. Partnering municipalities would be Plover, Whiting, Park Ridge, and then county as a whole. Barring there not being any major issues, gaps as identified with other jurisdictions, the goal would be to bring this before adoption in March, give or take. And you as a commission, we would be seeking a recommendation from you folks to provide to the council for adoption. So that was a lot
of the maps
of the plan in its entirety.
Okay, can I get a little bit more background? You said that there was a 2014 plan. Why the need for all this?
Yeah, and obviously, Jeff, you can chime in since you were director, but director for the county at the time. But so, at least on my end, I think the big thing was I'm blanking on the Kristen's predecessor, her name.
Pardon?
The Kristen's predecessor, county planner?
Sarah.
Sarah, thank you. There was one person through county planning zoning taking the lead on the development of this plan, and I believe, Jeff, shortly after the plan was adopted, Sarah left. Mm-hmm. And it kind of went into this conundrum of the plan sat, dust accumulated, and not many really outside of the city, to a certain extent, really implemented the recommendations identified in the plan. So one of the strategies that we took in the application for the grant funding and through the planning process thus far is to directly involve all of the other jurisdictions in creating this plan for a couple of reasons. One, that there is accountability when it comes time to implementing the plan. So if, say, the city isn't upholding our end of the bargain, but the Village of Plover is doing great work implementing theirs, the expectation is that they would keep us accountable and make sure that we're following suit on our recommendations as well. Number two, I think it's just understanding the reality that as time goes by, when a plan gets developed, the main stakeholders that were involved in the creation of said plan are going to leave or not be as heavily invested in implementing that plan. And so the emphasis on involving all the urban area municipalities in the planning process, creating a governance structure on the county level, task force and 2 subcommittees, and having those continue to meet after this plan is adopted to focus on the implementation of this plan. This is really meant to make sure that when there is staff turnover, that the implementation of the plan will still continue going forward. And I think lastly, the specifics of the 2014 plan, there are carryovers of that plan into this plan. I think just like anything, there's technological advances, there's new recommended strategies in the engineering realm of what's the preferred type of design for roadway or for site development. So this is really meant to incorporate some of those newer strategies. Jeff?
I can maybe take another shot at maybe a different part of your question. Back in the day, over time there had been a lot of work in the county on health and fitness in general. And the county, I guess, there had been some planning done in the late 90s in the metro area for bike ped planning. And the decision was made to apply for a grant to try to do a plan for the entire county that would put the county and the municipalities in a position to perhaps get grant monies to start implementing some ideas toward that. extending the networks, building health and fitness options and transportation options in the county. And the scale of it, by necessity, needed to be the county, because it's not just urban activities, but it goes out throughout the county. It was part of a large push at that time to accomplish that type of planning. And so we were able to get the grant, hired the consultant, and the original plan was broken into the two parts that carry forward to this one. What are the rural aspects of it, which is a different, as this plan points out, a different setting for the activities than in the urban area. And so, as Adam pointed out, the point person at the county ended up leaving the county, and we didn't have, I guess, the wherewithal to keep up those aspects of engagement in the planning side going forward, and so it languished. Plover adopted their parts of the plan, the city adopted their parts of the plan, and used that kind of to push that forward, and that was always a great thing. So I think when it came time to update it this time, the county again took the lead on it for however reason the political decisions get made, but the county as more of the kind of an umbrella agency to help bring these other municipalities on board. That's why you again have the rural and the urban area aspect to it. And part of the point was, okay, if you're going to have a network for pedestrians and for bikes, what would you really like to see? I mean, what would a connected, extensive network be? And if that's part of your question of why is all this in here, it's pretty much an aspirational plan, right? And the point is now the work has been done to identify what really beneficial extensions of the existing networks would be, and now it's up to the individual communities to say, okay, what can we do to move this forward in a fiscally prudent way? You know, where are we going to stretch? Where are we going to have it money where it makes sense? And if I understand this, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the county's plan, right? And the city's role in this will be to say that our participation has led to this overall document, and we approve of
XYZ.
Yeah, what the product is, and then at some point, the city will have to take specific actions to say, okay, we're going to incorporate this specifically into the things that we want to get done. And that's the way it was done last time. I assume that's the way it would be done this time. It doesn't obligate the city to do anything, but through the efforts and the agreements and collaborative nature of the project, it's like, okay, this is really what we think is going to be important. Does that get anywhere close to what you were?
I mean, for me, there's two things here. The plan makes a lot of sense that we're reviewing. What you explained with the grant dollars and kind of the grant then begets more grants, and you got to feed the beast to kind of keep it going with all these pieces. I have a problem with the advocacy piece, because it's become one of the most divisive topics in the county. And so, that background helps understand where all this came from, which is, this is something we want to strive to do, and then you got a grant, you've got to obligate, all the obligations that go with that, and it just kind of keeps going. But, for the sake of the plan, if we're backing the maps, that makes sense. If we're endorsing the plan, that's going to be problematic for me, because there's things in here that I don't think our community wants.
Well, I'd be curious when the time comes if you could expand on that. I'm very curious what that would be.
There's a lot to expand on. I mean, we hear it all the time, and so it almost sounds like we got ourselves into something we wanted to do, and now it's just because we did that, we got to do this, and you start going down a path that you didn't intend to go down. Looking at connecting our roads and making it possible for bikes and pedestrians and cars and all those to get to places more conveniently makes sense. Investing money into telling people that they should ditch their car and get a bike doesn't make sense.
Well, that would be a perspective, I think, and a valid one because you have it.
Not when it comes from the city and from us. If it comes from the outside, fine. I don't think that should be our role, but again, I see two different things. The plan that's here, yeah, we want to accommodate that, but I think we want to tell people to do what they want to do. So that's my 2 cents.
And I guess at the same time, I acknowledge that, and I don't take that from it. So it's an interesting perspective, and certainly one that's worth talking about.
Yeah, so I'll expand, like, one of the, this is referenced a few times within the plan, but a desired strategy to identify where the recommended bike routes are in the city. And one of the conversations that myself, Director Badun, and Vanderwall had was, okay, when the middle segment of this Business 51 gets reconstructed, middle segment being where Belts Carl-D's are up to 4th, there's the recognition that there's not room in the right-of-way to have those features. So if somebody wants to get from Belts Carl-D's and go up to downtown or go up to Salvation Army, anywhere up in there, what is the clear delineated route that the city, or that is being recommended in the plan that bicyclists should take? And so that's where the back and forth in the bike map, it identifies Wyatt as the...
No, I think that's good, and I think that that's needed and necessary. I just don't think that what's needed is telling people they should take a bike on that path.
Yeah.
Allowing for people that want to take a bike is different. So, I support putting in the needs and creating the paths. I just don't like the advocacy piece.
And I'll say, I guess one big reason of why we sought the grant funding in the first place is there was a lot of street projects, even those that don't include bicycling facilities included in a street reconstruction plan, that identifies a newly up-to-date bike ped plan as greater odds of getting grant funding from the US DOT. I mean, right, wrong, or different, it's unfortunately the game that has to be played sometime to make sure that the financial constraints that the city, like any municipality has, can best be mitigated through seeking outside funding.
Just as long as we're that transparent about tap dancing.
Which was not a pun about the transportation, what is it? What's TAP stand for?
Transportation Alternatives Program, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was very
So I
good.
could tap dance.
You can tap dance.
Well, I think it was also an implementation
River
point
crossing.
or it was in the goals, objectives, and policies of the 06 plan, I believe is where it kind of came from way back in the day. And I just wanted to toss in that if anybody gets a chance, they should, or if you haven't watched it already, watch the video of that meeting. Super informative.
Bike ped one?
Yeah. That was great. And I just wanted to say thank you for all the work that you and Director Badun have done, coordinating with people, checking with people, investigating things. I think after watching that, I'm really comfortable with all the work that went into it and sort of how it got to where it is. And I think when the time comes, we can talk about if it's just a must do, can do, should do, why not do sort of perspective on it. So just thanks for the work. I do have a couple comments on some stuff. I suppose I could send it to you.
Is more like grammar, word choice, stuff like that, or big picture?
Well, things like, say you have, on page 64, there's a strategy that says continue providing bike racks on buses, but the paragraph doesn't talk a thing about bike racks on buses.
Okay. That's a fair, give an explanation
And
of a policy.
I can send you this stuff, things
that
like
might be-
the references to the Portage County DMB. I'm pretty sure we don't have one, and there's and then little picky points. A couple words are missing, and North Central is the North Central Wisconsin RPC, not just the North Central RPC. I'll send you a list.
Tisk.
Vanderwall.
Well, and in your goal statement, there's a 2R. Fourth line, and we are municipalities.
It's supposed to be we were, and where our municipality is not, and we.
Yeah. It's fair points. Yeah, if you want to send that over, I can let Vanderwall Jackie know.
Jackie, yes.
Vanderwall Jackie.
Yeah.
I had to make that distinction at Bike Ped since
Yes, you did.
Jackie Guthrie.
That's an interesting point, Mike, and I would like to talk more about that.
I guess any other big picture comments? Otherwise, if not, obviously if there's more fine tooth, more minutia that you want to provide commentary to, email me, shoot me a call. Happy to chat.
I'm a little disappointed there isn't a whole lot of discussion about the Plover River crossing, since it's under construction right now, and it fits into a couple of places where safe routes and things, but anyway.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, we did have a good chat about that, about more so in relation to the bike facilities map of calling that out more and having that serve more identifiable as that connection point. So as we look to expand the bike ped, the bike network, kind of along Brolowski and eastward, that it's more distinguishable. But.
I'm sorry, I'm chuckling over the cover photo for Chapter 3. I'm not sure who it is, but I definitely think he's missing a helmet.
Okay, now I want to know.
Modeling poor behavior.
How dare they?
There's a sentence in there where I'm not, I have it written down, but whoever it is, sponsored bike rodeos and bike helmet supplying is how it's written.
I like that.
They do bike rodeos and bike helmet supplying.
Yes, something on his
Supply
head.
bike helmets. Yeah, it's just a weird
Wording.
choice.
Yeah, something on his hat, but not
But
not the right type of
not the right type of
Piece of
garb
equipment.
if you ask a road cyclist either. Like, I got questions.
yeah. But cool. Appreciate the time.
Anything else? Then I will say we are adjourned at 8:52.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.